Imagine waking up on a small island where your morning view is not traffic, skyscrapers, or city lights, but oil tankers the size of floating buildings. Now imagine those ships are carrying enough energy to affect fuel prices, shipping costs, and economies thousands of miles away. That place is real. It is called the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman, where the Persian Gulf opens toward the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. To the world, Hormuz is an energy lifeline. To governments, it is a strategic pressure point. To markets, it is a risk. But to the people who live here, it is something much more personal. It is home. This is VeyrScope, and today we are going inside the Strait of Hormuz, not just to see the tankers, the oil, and the danger, but to understand the forgotten lives and strange landscapes surrounding one of the most important waterways on Earth. Because while the world watches the ships, almost nobody looks at the shore. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places that looks small on a map but carries a giant weight in real life. Inside the Persian Gulf are some of the world's major oil and gas producers. Outside the strait is the route toward the Indian Ocean and global markets. Between them is Hormuz. Every day, tankers move through this passage carrying crude oil, petroleum products, and liquefied natural gas. If the flow slows down, the effect can travel fast. Energy prices react. Shipping routes become nervous. Governments issue warnings. Analysts start counting barrels. But here is the strange part. While the world measures Hormuz in millions of barrels per Dalton Yai, local families measure it in something much simpler: fish tides, heat, wind, a good catch, an empty net. At sunrise, fishermen push their boats into the same water where giant tankers move through the global energy system. One vessel may carry oil for entire economies. Another carries one family's hope for the week. For a moment, both share the same sea. And that single image explains Hormuz better than any headline ever could. A global machine above the water, a human life beneath it. Near the mouth of the strait sits Hormuz Island. From above, it looks almost unreal. A small island surrounded by blue water, covered with red hills, orange cliffs, yellow earth, white salt, and dark volcanic tones. People call it Rainbow Island, but that name almost sounds too gentle. Hormuz is not just colorful, it is intense. The island is shaped by salt dome geology, where ancient layers of salt and rock pushed upward through the earth over time. That movement brought minerals, iron-rich rocks, and vivid colors to the surface. The result is a landscape that feels less like a normal island and more like a page torn from another planet. But for the people of Hormuz, this is not fantasy. It is daily life. The red soil is not just something tourists photograph. Locals have used it in art, crafts, and even traditional food. In some places, the land itself becomes part of the kitchen. The sea gives fish, the earth gives color, and the island enters everyday life in a way most outsiders would never imagine. This is what makes Hormuz different. It is not just a place people live on. It is a place people live with, and that relationship is becoming more fragile. As photos of the red beaches and rainbow mountains spread online, more visitors arrive. More footsteps cross delicate ground. More people want to take a piece of the island home, sometimes literally. But when a place becomes famous for being beautiful, beauty itself can become endangered. That is the first hidden danger of Hormuz. Not oil, attention. Not far away is Qeshm, the largest island in the Persian Gulf. Qeshm feels like a world built from stone, salt, sea, and story. One of its most famous places is the Valley of Stars. The name sounds mythical because the place feels mythical. Narrow sandstone canyons rise from the ground. Tall columns and flat-topped formations create shadows that shift through the day. Local belief says the valley was formed by a falling star. Science explains it through erosion. Wind, rain, and time carved the soft rock into strange shapes. But when you stand in a place like that, science alone does not feel like the whole answer. You can explain the rock, but you cannot fully explain the silence. You can explain erosion, but you cannot fully explain why the valley feels alive. That is why landscapes like this matter. They are not just geological sites. They are memory. They are myth. They are how people turn strange land into meaning. But Qeshm has another world hidden inside it. A forest growing in saltwater. A forest growing in saltwater. The Hara mangrove forest lives between land and sea, rising and disappearing with the tide. At high tide, the trees seem to float. At low tide, their roots appear from the mud like a living network. These trees survive where most plants cannot. Salt water surrounds them. Heat presses down on them. The ground disappears twice a day, and still they grow. For tourists, the mangroves are peaceful. For local fishermen, they are survival. They shelter fish. They protect the coast. They guide boats through tidal channels. They are not decoration. They are infrastructure built by nature, and this is where Hormuz becomes more than a shipping route. It becomes an ecosystem. A system of reefs, mangroves, fish, birds, islands, mudflats, heat, and human knowledge. Knowledge passed from one generation to another. Where the water turns shallow, where fish gather, where the tide can trap a boat, where the wind changes without warning. No satellite fully understands that, but local people do. Long before oil made Hormuz globally important, empires already understood the power of this passage. Control the water, and you influence trade. Control the island, and you watch the ships. On Hormuz Island, the old Portuguese fort still stands near the coast. Its red stone walls look almost like they belong to the land itself. In the 1500s, Portuguese power reached Hormuz as part of a larger attempt to control trade routes through the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean. The fort was built as a statement, a message in stone. This passage matters, but today the fort is weathered. The walls are broken, salt air has softened its edges, the island is slowly taking it back. And that is the lesson of Hormuz. Every empire believes it can control geography. But geography is patient. Flags change, ships change, weapons change. The sea remains. Across the water, on the Omani side, the Musandam Peninsula rises sharply from the sea. Mountains drop into deep blue water. Narrow inlets cut through the rock. Villages appear in places that seem almost unreachable. Musandam is part of Oman, but separated from the rest of the country by the United Arab Emirates. Even politically, it feels like a place apart. For the people living there, geography is not scenery. It decides everything: where a house can stand, where a boat can land, where a path can exist, where isolation begins. From these cliffs, the modern world passes below. Tankers move slowly through the strait. Fishing boats cross nearby. One vessel belongs to global energy. The other belongs to local life, and both depend on the same water. But the danger of Hormuz is not only political, it is environmental. Beneath the surface, coral reefs survive in some of the hottest marine conditions on Earth. These reefs have adapted to extreme heat over long periods. But adaptation does not mean invincibility. That is the mistake humans often make. Because something has survived harsh conditions, we assume it can survive anything. It cannot. Rising sea temperatures, coastal development, anchoring, pollution, and pressure from shipping can push even strong ecosystems too far. And fishermen may notice the change before scientists publish the data. The fish move. The catch declines. The old places stop working. Environmental change does not first arrive as a report. It arrives as an empty net. That is why the Strait of Hormuz is not just a story about oil. It is a story about pressure. Pressure on markets, pressure on governments, pressure on ecosystems, pressure on small communities that must continue ordinary life beside extraordinary risk. And this pressure does not stop at the water. Beyond the strait, Iran holds some of the most extreme landscapes on Earth. To the southeast lies the Lut Desert, a hyper-arid region famous for massive wind-carved yardangs and some of the highest land surface temperatures ever recorded. To the north, near the Caspian Sea, the Hyrcanian forests have survived for tens of millions of years, ancient broadleaf forests that feel like a living memory of another age. Think about that contrast. Burning desert, ancient forest, red island, salt cave. Mangrove channels, coral reefs, mountain villages, oil tankers. All connected by the larger story of a region where nature, trade, and survival constantly collide. And at the center of that collision is Hormuz. The world usually asks one question about this place: what happens if the Strait of Hormuz closes? But maybe we should ask another question too. What happens if Hormuz stays open, but the people and ecosystems around it are slowly worn down? What happens when a place becomes valuable to everyone except the people who live there? What happens when the world depends on a passage it barely understands? The Strait of Hormuz is narrow, but the story inside it is enormous. It is a route for oil and gas, a home for fishermen, a place of red soil and salt air, a landscape of mangroves, reefs, mountains, forts, valleys, and legends. And maybe the next time its name appears in the news, we should remember this. Hormuz is not just a line on a map. It is not just a risk to the global economy. It is a living place, carrying the weight of the world while the world keeps passing by. This is VeyrScope. Subscribe for more stories about the hidden places shaping our planet.